RTG, a podcast about a team in RED, not blue, not green. Everyone has a choice to support their local team, and we're two who do. Yes, that is a play on the season ticket video. Welcome back to another episode of Red Tinted Glasses. It's Glenn, it's Phil, and we've got another positive podcast to talk about, don't we, Phil?
Yes, I don't know if there'll be a positive reaction to that attempted Dr. Dre intro there, Glenn.
Yeah, move
Um,
over Ransom FA. There's a new local rapper in town.
yeah, I don't know if he's going to be challenged too soon. Maybe you can release your own version of that Duke song that came out last year to really get the people going. But yeah, good once again. Good to be talking about the Dons on the up. Hampden bound once more, so no complaints.
Yeah, Hampden bound once more. We are recording this on Monday evening. It's currently half time in the St Johnston game. So by the time this episode comes out, we won't actually know. Well, we will know who we've got, but for the duration of this recording, we won't know. So we'll give our thoughts on that. But I think, given we've kind of paid homage to the season ticket promo video, which of course I think your doppelganger did very well in his rap. Although I know a few people picked up on the accent in it, and I kind of listened back a couple of times thinking, is that really how brutal some Aberdonians can sound? Season tickets as a whole, prices frozen until the end of the month in the loyalty scheme. I think that's a really good initiative that the club have brought in for this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think again I've spoken about it on this podcast before when it came to ticketing prices. As Aberdonians, any chance to make a saving, albeit I think is about £14 or something for the South Stand,
Yeah.
is a saving nonetheless. That's a couple pies over a season for me. So yeah, quite pleased that they've brought that in. Obviously, you would love it to maybe go on a bit longer than the March.
Mm.
But we'll take what we can, and obviously it's great the club's putting that in place, considering all the rising costs around football these days.
Yeah, it's something forward thinking. As you said, I think my ticket's £7 difference, but hey, it's better than a poke in the eye. And Don's cash on top of that, I think I can get Rory's ticket pretty much for half price in the Red Shed next season. So very much pleased with that. So yeah, and I think looking at the club's reaction to the first day sales, it seemed to be record sales as well, which is really encouraging, especially if you think about the form at the start of the year. Timing's everything when it comes to releasing the season ticket information, I'm sure, and the fact that now we've got a trip to Hampden to look forward to as well will just help with ticket sales going forward for the next couple of games, as well as people, I'm sure, look to boost their loyalty points before we see how the tickets are going to be sold for Hampden. Albeit, I guess if we draw Celtic, it might be a tougher ask to sell them.
Yeah, maybe just a tad, but as well, obviously the season ticket news of the auto renewal coming out as well, the opportunity to have a plaque on your seat, albeit I don't know how that's quite going to work in the Red Shed with the unallocated seating.
I think it's only
Um,
in certain stands though that they're doing that.
Perfect. No, that makes sense. But yeah, another added incentive. Obviously, you and Joe, who listen to the podcast, that we had the pleasure of accompanying in Germany, who sat next
Hmm.
to me in Cologne, knew how much I enjoyed the plaques on the seats
Yeah.
in the Rheinstadion. Even more so that the seat that I was sat on was a man named Philippe. So that's something that a collector and a bit of a nerd like me is kind of all for.
Yeah, especially for those that have sat in the same seat for so long, it's going to mean a lot, and add to the value of the seat when, or if I suppose we should say, we move stadium. So yeah, it's strange how the season's already getting to that point where we're looking ahead, I guess, in the sense of next season with season ticket renewals. I get paid on Friday, so that'll be a trip to the ticket office at the weekend to renew the season tickets for that. But let's speak about things on the pitch. As I said, it's a trip to Hampden, confirmed after a routine 4-1 victory over Queen's Park, showing that really there isn't much issue dealing with Queen's Park when it comes to playing them at home in the Scottish Cup. Although this was the first time that Queen's had ventured past Glasgow, and the Dons yet to venture south of Stonehaven, but we will be, of course, as we return to Hampden for the second time this season in April. 4 changes to the Dons lineup, Phil. Dorrington, unsurprisingly, starting for the injured Christers Tobers. Graham Shinney, probably the biggest surprise coming into the team. or actually maybe Leighton Clarkson replacing Sievert Nielsen, and Obde Dabag and Shaden Morris also coming into the starting lineup as well. Were you surprised to see that many changes? Because I know we spoke about it last time on the live episode about starting our strongest 11. Do we know what that is? I kind of felt a bit strong on Saturday. Certainly at half time it did.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Like you say, I don't think the changes were too much a surprise. We spoke about trying to keep the lineup as similar to the one that ended the game against
Mm-hmm.
Dundee United, and I think a lot of people were probably in the same boat. Like you say, perhaps a little bit of a statement that Graham Shinnie was started at left back for his 600 appearance, taking it full circle, almost back to his first one, position wise. But again, another great game, and obviously a goal which we'll discuss later on to cap off his 600th game in professional football.
The
But yeah,
the
really solid, I think.
the appearance of Graham Shinnie at left back, because I know Callum's not on the episode today, but Callum said in our group chat that he felt it was very much a statement putting Graham into left back over Jack McKenzie. Would you agree with that? Like, or is it, again, some people caveat that with the level of opposition, and I think I mentioned it on the last episode that it kind of allowed us to play Graham Shinnie there, or do you think that is with St Johnston obviously coming up this weekend in mind as well?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, Jack looks like he's maybe struggled a little bit fitness wise over the season as a whole. Sort of little injuries here and there. So whether it was a sort of preventative measure taken, but I think Shinnie has looked really good at left back in the games that he's played so far. I mean, we spoke about the other week, almost sort of seems revitalized.
Mm.
Myself, and as well as a few others have maybe written him off a little bit this season in terms of his midfield performances, but he's definitely made us look a lot more balanced when he's slotted in at that left back role so far. And I think Thielen's noticed that himself, and is definitely he's there on merit. He's not just trying to shoehorn Shinnie into the team for the sake of
Mm.
it. We've seen that with the fact that he's been dropped so frequently.
Yeah.
But I think for me, maybe the bigger thing was the total omission of Sievert Nielsen. I don't know what your thoughts might be on the fact he wasn't included at all.
Yeah, well, admittedly, I haven't listened to Jimmy Tillin's post-match comments or looked into it. I'm wondering if there was a suspension there, wouldn't put it past him, or if it was again the opportunity came about to rest him. I know there's been a lot of talk about him nursing an injury. Dante Polvara, got minutes towards the end of the game, which is obviously great to see him back. Leighton Clarkson has done well off the bench in recent weeks, in my opinion. And we spoke again in the last episode about the impact he had when he came on against Dundee United. So I, I actually didn't feel we missed Nielsen at all at the weekend. It'll be interesting to see if there's any talks or comments around his omission when it comes to Jimmy Tillin's pre-match press conference for St Johnston later on in the week.
Yeah, I mean, I was like to say, a potential suspension wouldn't really surprise me. I was speaking with a few of the Four Threads guys
Mhm.
today, where we sort of were looking at the stats regarding fouls to bookings.
Yeah.
I think maybe Pie Bovril had posted on Twitter, where I think we were looking at roughly around about 5 fouls per yellow card compared to like the Celtic's 9.5.
Mhm.
A lot of us were saying that is no doubt down to Shinnie and Nielsen and how susceptible they are to picking up either cheap bookings that are merited or not.
I
So
think it's
so
also
definitely an interesting one.
I think I've seen someone as well say it's actually a trademark of a Jimmy Thelin side as well, going back to his time at Elfsborg. So, and I think Callum spoke about it a lot previously about how we were quite a soft team and we never gave away enough fouls to kind of put ourselves about. So it's kind of good to see us showing a bit of fight in that team now.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, even quote unquote lacking that fight without Nielsen in
Mm,
the midfield, I don't think we really looked worse off even against a lower league opposition, which typically tend to be a little bit more physical in nature.
yeah.
Again, comparing it to a lot of the good sort of midfield duos you see, even in a sort of Scottish nature of the likes of Gilmore and Ryan Christie,
Mm,
sitting deep for Scotland. It's the same sort of nature of Palaversa and Clarkson. I think having those two really technical midfielders did help us, but obviously a rather shaky start to the game, shall we say? Queens Park definitely not shy of chances, and
Mm.
definitely not looking to sit in. What did you think about our start? And did you think that we kind of grew into the game a little bit after the first sort of 10, 10, 15?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was having this debate with a couple of guys at work today about our start, and we kind of all saw it a little bit differently. Where a couple of them thought we started okay. Yes, Queens had a couple of half chances, but overall they thought that we started well. I, on the other hand, thought we looked. I don't know, nervy is not really the right word, but I think Queens Park came out to play football, which is great to see. They could have easily come in and sat in and tried to frustrate us, but they wanted to take the game to Aberdeen, and that was a little bit to their downfall. Again, sitting in the main stand, it was really interesting, kind of watching Callum Davidson, kind of some of his reaction to the lack of pressing from some of his team in that early stages, where it allowed us uh, easy possession to get the ball up the field, and you could see that he was getting frustrated because we were then kind of turning that into a bit of a counter attack. Did we get fortunate that they were maybe a little bit sloppy? I'm thinking of the one where Alexander Jensen gets caught under the ball. Again, I think back to when we were sitting here September, October time saying, a better team with a bit better quality probably finished that opportunity. You could argue that. I think Knoesters makes a great block on the volley. I don't know what Queen's Park player it was, but Jesus, that was
I think
hit.
it was Turner, perhaps. I think off the top of
And
my head.
and I think had Knooster's body not been in the way, that was finding the back of the net. I don't even think Mitov had a chance. Just the pace and the connection on it. Um, and yes, it would have been a different game had they taken the lead. They didn't. And I think what was encouraging to see was we didn't kind of look unnerved by the opportunities that were coming up. We stuck to task, which we've seen plenty of time under Jimmy Thelin, and continued that pressing, attacking football, and utilising more so Shaden Morris, who got a rare start um, at right mid. And I know a lot of people are maybe going to say that should settle the debate about whether he's an impact sub or not. Toby Keskinen, probably the quieter of the two, again, in his natural left position. But yeah, I thought we utilised the wing and spread the ball and spread Queen's Park a lot in that first half, and that showed, I guess, as they kind of tired as the half went on.
Yeah, no, I think there's a couple of interesting points there that you raise. I think the nerviness, perhaps. You say that despite sort of coming under that pressure, we didn't really look nervous or worried. Do you think that maybe that start was a bit of complacency, perhaps, and that sort of woke us up a little bit to sort of realize we actually were in a game and it wasn't potentially going to be a walk in the park?
I don't know. I don't know if complacency is fair. I think probably more credit to Queens Park about how they approached the game. The only thing I was nervous in the first 10 minutes was if I was going to get sunburn or not, because it was a rare day at Pataudry. I know you were singing your heart out and down in York on karaoke, but yeah, it was a lovely day for football at Pataudry. But I think in these cup games against lower league sides, we spoke about it in the Dunfermline game. They're going to get chances, and it just felt that all their chances up until their goal in the second half came within that first kind of 10-15 minute spell. Thankfully, they didn't take it. Again, we spoke about the changes that we've made. There's players in there that maybe aren't used to the kind of playing a lot. Like you look at Clarkson and Palaversa, but you also look at Dorrington and Knoesters. That connection hasn't had time to build as well. So I could maybe put it more down to that rather than complacency. But again, like I said, I think what impressed me most was we just stuck to task. Alexander Jensen was getting a lot of criticism from the old guys behind me, first kind of being caught out in the first half, but he looked bright red about 20 minutes in. I don't know how Adam Devine wore Under Armour throughout the first half. Maybe he just forgot to put his suntan lotion on, but he had an absolute torrid first half. No surprise to see he went off at half time. I think it was an injury, but yeah, Shaden Morris ran him into the ground.
Yeah, like you say, my shining performance of Taylor Swift down in York combined with I don't know what the worst shine might have been off your head or off of Meathoff's teeth. But a real shining light, like you say, Shayden Morris as well as
Mm.
Ode Dabag, both in from the start. You've kind of touched on it already, just how effective Morris was. Obviously, 2 assists to Ode on the day. Um, what a bit more perhaps on both of their performances. Obviously, mainly being bench players so far this season.
Yeah, I think we've spoken about Shayden Morris being the most used sub in the league this season, and a lot of people are going to say that Saturday's performance should settle the debate on whether he starts. And I think certainly based on what he can offer us versus what Jeppe Ockels can offer us so far, you could definitely put a case for that argument is settled. Excuse me. I think it also says a lot that Shayden Morris bagging 2 assists now takes him up to 11 for the season. Given what his return was in that category over the last 2 seasons, it's a phenomenal return. And I think what you also need to compare that to is I saw the stat that it said the last 3 players to hit double figures in terms of assists was Niall McGinn, Johnny Hayes, and Ryan Christie. So it's a real testament to where Shayden Morris was, around this time last season. Kind of really is actually, not long after getting hooked against Motherwell to being a player people are saying, now needs to be in from the start. Would I start him on Saturday against St Johnston? Yes. I think again we've spoken plenty of times about players' performances being rewarded. Although I thought he looked good against Elgin and then was dropped for Jeppe Ockels. So would I be surprised to see Ockels into the lineup? No, I wouldn't, because that's just how Jimmy Thelin has been operating. But I think with the directness and the problems he was causing, he has to start. And I think the advantage to then flip it to Obde Dabag was you've got 2 strikers there for Shayden Morris to hit when he gets to the byline. He can pull it up for Kevin Nisbet, or Obde, I noticed a lot in the first half was kind of falling to the penalty spot. So then there's a cutback option. And I think that also helps Shayden Morris a lot when you've got a couple of options. And I think Obde as well showed his clinical nature in front of goal. Both goals are tap-ins, yes, but at the end of the day, you also need to be in the right areas. We've spoken a lot about Kevin Nisbet being that striker, and okay, yeah, his first goal is a great finish, but he's had trouble in those areas this season. So to have that striker with that kind of predatory instinct is a huge advantage. And again, for as much as I slated William Miller on the last episode, he was full of praise for the strike partnership, because again, going into the January transfer window, we were questioning where goals were coming from. We've now got 2 strikers scoring.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on there. I mean, the BBC even brought up themselves and reference to Shayden Morris about how it was almost a sort of year ago that Neil Warnock hooked him after 20 minutes whilst we were 3-0 down to Motherwell. So the fact that,
Mm.
like you say, this season he's joining the sort of company of McGinn, Hayes, and Christie in terms of double-digit assists is I don't think any Dons fan would have had that on their bingo card for this season. And similarly, like you say, regarding Ode, how long we've been crying out for a striker that's been in that position. We've got the ball in between the posts and the 6 yard box so many times, and no one's been there. So there's a lot of confidence to take from that.
The
Um,
biggest thing as well for me on Dabag as well, and again, I think this is another advantage of sitting with a side-on view rather than being behind the goal as I'm usually at Pittodrie, but I was moved to the main stand for the cup games, was kind of watching that partnership with him and Kevin Nisbet, and the communication between the two when one was kind of further forward, the other one dropped into the 10, and vice versa. And Kevin Nisbet was screaming in the first half at one point at 0-0 at the midfield to push up and kind of offer them a little bit of support in there. But the biggest thing for me around Dabag is the way he operates off the last defender's shoulder. He was always looking to just be on that line, ready for the through ball from Shayden Morris or Topi Keskinen, regardless, and willing to make that driving run, which just pulls defenders out of place and then frees up for your Kevin Nisbets or a forward-thinking midfielder. So it's really intelligent forward play that I think he brings to this team.
Definitely, and I mean, speaking of intelligence and his fellow strike partner, obviously you've briefly mentioned Nisbet's first goal. it's an interesting one for me. Obviously, 2 goals from set pieces in the 4-1 rout of Queen's Park. An area we've kind of struggled with. I
Hmm.
would like to hear your perspective on the first goal, because for me, I can't tell if it's part of a set piece plan or if Nisbet is just being so prone to our terrible deliveries that don't beat the first man that it was really clever from him to just predict that that was going to happen and make that run to the near post and glance it in. Perhaps a touch of the Brazilian flair to add a few pennies to Kevin's price tag in the summer.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I tell you, that link originally, when you LinkedIn intelligence, you could do this hosting job more often. Um, I'll tell you, my first thoughts when we got the corner was, will I film it or not? Because it'd make a good YouTube short if we score. But our corners are fucking shite, so nothing will come from it. And then Kevin Nisbet pulls that out of the hat. Um, what a finish from Kevin. And yeah, again, I think it is quite ironic, as you said, that we score 2 goals from set pieces. Both of them, well, one's a bit of flair about them, one has a bit of good fortune about them, but you could argue the same about the first. If we can't beat the first man, might as well make our own man the first man. Um, and I guess we also spoke about being able to beat Callum Ferry. You're going to need to do something special, and that was that from Kevin Nisbet. And I think as well, it just shows there's a bit of confidence about him again. I was listening to his interview after the game and he spoke about all the work he's been doing off the pitch. And that's why he feels he's now in a much better position. And again, you spoke about the Shayden Morris being on the bingo card. Who would have thought on the 10th of March, we're sitting here speaking, potentially finding out that Kevin Nisbet's in the Scotland squad by the end of this week. Into double figures again for the season now in all competitions for Aberdeen. It's great to have a striker hitting double figures, and as you said, that finish is only going to increase his value. But I also think that finish and his all-round game again, which was showcased on Saturday, is going to lead to debate in pubs, on podcasts, on social media about whether or not we sign Kevin Nisbet come the summer.
Yeah, and I mean you're exactly right. You've hit the nail on the head in terms of the confidence, and I think that's something that we've seen sort of growing week on week is the confidence. He's looked sharper, he's looked fitter, and like I say, his all round game is really came together. 4 goals and 2 assists in the last five, going back to the Dundee game. Um, really, really impressive stuff from
Mhm.
a player who myself and many others included had probably written off in terms of being a bit of a dud loan. Um, before the sort of turn of the year. So really great from Kevin, and obviously the second goal from the set piece, which made it 3-0. Obviously coming from Sinead again, perhaps a bit of luck there. Palaversa is a great talent. Whether he spotted Sinead free on the edge and meant that one, I'm not too sure. A slight bit of luck there, perhaps with Ferry also having his sight blocked, but
Mhm.
at 3-0, and obviously Shinnie grabbing a goal in a milestone game, must have sort of thought it was um, on route to be a bit of a cricket score, perhaps.
Perhaps. I thought, it killed the contest. It killed the game, which was, great from our point of view, because we spoke last time out about wanting to see a polished performance, and I felt, despite that shaky start, the first 45 very much was a polished performance from a Don's team, which was, great to see. The third goal, yes, it has a slice of luck, but Graham Shinney wasn't for the want of trying on Saturday, often trying his luck from distance. Um, but I think it's also nice to see a little bit of invention kind of coming up from set pieces. Again, the first one, the second one. But I think what really kind of killed the contest is, in terms of speaking about the third goal, was actually how quickly we got the second goal. That just seemed to knock all stuffing out of Queen's Park, and you actually kind of felt, well, I certainly did, around the ground, that it was like, okay, this team that we're playing, yes, they've had a couple of opportunities, but aren't probably going to score twice to take this any further than it needs to be. And the way we're playing right now, we're probably going to add more to that. So I think that was the real, for me, kind of when I felt that, yeah, we can look forward to Hampden.
Yeah, I mean, it's going back to a point you made early on in the episode about, Queen's Park's desire to press sort of
Mhm.
potentially being their undoing. At 3-0 down, they've already exerted so much energy. They've now got this mountain to climb as well
Yeah.
as, not only physically, in scoreline wise, but psychologically as well. And then to lose a fourth goal
Hmm.
in the second half. I spoke about a cricket score before. 4-0 tie done. Shady Mo getting his second assist of the day in a very similar
Hmm.
nature to how he
Yeah.
got his first, and Ode Dabag scoring his second.
Yeah, it was. It was a very much carbon copy of the second goal. And at that point, I was just like, ring the changes, go and make them, and give the likes of Fletcher Boyd, who did come on shortly after, minutes, but give some of these fringe players. Let's not be silly here. Let's give opportunities to players who haven't had many minutes, but also let's protect players. You know, I was definitely in the mindset, let's get as many of them off as we can to protect them. But I think, kind of going back to the point there where you said about Queen's Park having a mountain to climb, it was interesting to kind of hear Callum Davidson after the game speak about them kind of shooting themselves in the foot with the quick concession of goals. And, we spoke about during the live last time when Queen's Park were actually 2-0 up against Ayr United, or not long after we'd come off Ayr. And then Ayr proceeded to come back and win that game 3-2, but also score two goals in very quick concession. So I think, for them to do that again at the weekend will be extremely disappointing for Callum Davidson. But maybe it was something that we saw off the back of the video from that game in midweek.
Yeah, no, and I think you're absolutely right. I mean, we've spoken about before, the fact Aberdeen as well suffered from sort of losing goals, sort of
Hmm.
in very short space of either ourselves scoring or
Yeah.
already being a goal down. And I've got no doubts that kind of maybe sapped out of Queen's Park.
Hmm.
You mentioned ringing the changes,
Hmm.
which Jimmy did at about the hour mark with a triple change.
Yeah.
Nisbet, Dabag, and Tope, all coming off with Boyd, Pape, and Ambrose coming on. Where I say perhaps the quick succession sapped a little bit of the energy and life out of Queen's Park. Do you think that triple change perhaps sapped a little bit out of Aberdeen, sort of slowed the tempo a little bit?
100%. It slowed the tempo out of the game. I think it also kind of sapped some of the energy out of the crowd, a little bit. In my opinion, I felt a little bit sorry for Dabag, and the opportunity to go and get his hat trick was taken from him. But equally, he's got an hour, he's got two goals, and hopefully he's chomping at the bit to add to that tally come 3 o'clock on Saturday against St Johnston. I'm kind of in two minds because as much as I feel the three players that came on didn't kind of have the initial impact that the three that they replaced did, it's also kind of taking away from the stunning save from Callum Ferry to deny Peter Ambrose. Pape did a couple of good runs, and was probably unlucky himself not to score. I thought Fletcher always was looking for the ball and did okay, but yeah, again, it was funny. The guy next to me just said he's all legs, isn't he? When he was speaking about Pape, and I don't know what else he offers, but I think depends how you view the game. At 4-0 up, you're through to the next round. You're giving players an opportunity. Again, it's maybe difficult for those players coming on at 4-0 as well, because it's not like they can come on and change the game. They're not coming on to do anything. They're just getting minutes in the legs. Okay, it's a chance to impress, but it's difficult because we're not in the need to press as much. We don't need to go and achieve a cricket score. And Queen's Park at that point are probably a little bit in damage limitation, so it becomes harder to break a team down once you're 4-0 up. So yeah, I'm not going to sit here and be critical of those players that came on, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you they did amazing. But yes, it disrupted the flow. In short.
Yeah, I think again, Pape, I think grew into the game a little bit.
Hmm.
Saw a bit more of that early season Pape flair when he
Hmm.
got himself out wide. Obviously with the introduction of Jack Milne and Dante Povara both making their returns
Hmm.
after injury. Once Pape got moved out wide, I thought he looked a lot better and a lot more like his old self. A
Hmm.
couple of cheeky nutmegs and step overs for good measure. Um, but other players who potentially impressed. Obviously, as I was watching from sunny Yorkshire, the BBC made made a big point, going as so far to name him their man of the match. Really impressed with Ante Palaversa. Obviously, I've mentioned the 2 assists
Mhm.
from the corners. Obviously, being in the stadium, a slightly different perspective.
Yeah.
Myself on the couch. What did you make of Ante's performance? You know, he's a player that we've sort of said he's at his best when you don't really notice him going about his work.
Yeah.
Was his impact quite noticeable, did you think, in that midfield? I mean, obviously in comparison to his performance against Dundee United.
Mhm. I just want to come back to you made the point about Jack Milne coming on and as well as Dante Polvara. I want to just pick up on Jack Milne coming back in, coming on for Alfie Dorrington, who I thought, obviously making his first start for Aberdeen, had a very good game and looked really solid, and how good it was to see Jack coming back, because I spoke about the disruption to the flow from the front three. I didn't think the back line looked very disrupted when Jack came on. Yes, okay, we concede when he's on the pitch, but that's through no fault of his own. So good to see another option being added to our defensive side. Going back to your original question about the impact of Ante Palaversa, the biggest takeaway I took from his post-match interview when he was awarded the man of the match, as you said from the BBC, was when he said this award is actually for the whole team, because there's he said something about there being a me in team, but success isn't gained without a whole team. It was such a wholesome comment. I found myself like going, "Oh," to the radio when he was like speaking about how just like grateful he was to accept it. But I think, yeah, you're right. He kind of, the way the work he does go a lot unnoticed. And I was actually more paying particular attention to Leighton Clarkson at the weekend. I mean, both Leighton and Ante's range of passing is an absolute joy to behold. And as I said, the weather was glorious, but as was those two's range of passing. Okay, sometimes it didn't come off, but in general, the way they can split a defence or put it on a plate for Shayden Morris to run into was just causing Queen's Park no end of problems, as you mentioned as well with Ante, the quality from the set piece. And then, yeah, but I was just as if not more impressed by Leighton Clarkson's performance than I was Ante Palaversa's. I know I've seen a few people actually say Leighton would have been their man of the match, but either of those two midfielders, I don't think you could have argued with. Although I'm sure Kevin Nisbet and Obde Dabag would have had something to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, Leighton's an interesting one for me because I always chop and change with where I think he looks best on the pitch. And I think
Yeah,
himself, he's admitted to his preferred position being that slightly deeper, number 6 quarterback role, whatever terminology we want to throw out in the podcast. Um, it's always somewhere that I never quite liked him, and I always preferred him in that 10. But then obviously
mm,
you can argue the opposition being, championship standard maybe made it look a lot more of a stroll for him.
yeah,
But he did stroll it in that sort of deeper role. Um, and again, coming back to the point earlier on in the show about, maybe not the necessity of, the combative midfielder needed there. The fact, we had two footballers, out and out footballers sitting deep who, like you say, an absolutely mesmerising range of passing. They do have a mesmerising range of passing and passion as well, to
well,
be honest.
Leighton Clarkson
Um,
does have a mesmerising range of passion. Just ask his missus now.
exactly, exactly. He's finally firing on the pitch and not just in the bedroom.
Yeah.
But just seeing two really solid technical footballers getting their foot on the ball and really driving us up the pitch was, really, really great to see. And hopefully, as feels like we've been saying for a majority of the season, starting to see Clarkson get back to his best and start to really make an impact on the team once more.
But
Um,
you see, even on that point about like kind of having two out and out kind of quality football players in that midfield, I think the biggest frustration for a lot of us is we don't see that quality enough from Leighton Clarkson. But again, for me, in that first half, when we were kind of panicking, I don't know if that's the right word. Some people maybe agree or disagree with that. At the back, he, had his hands out, right, calm down. I'll take the ball. I'll decide where this ball is going, and I'll just, take it from there. There was that. It looked like he was actually willing to take ownership, responsibility, in that midfield, which I feel we saw from him in the Dundee United game, where he took the game by the scruff of the neck, helped us get back into that game. And there was, I guess, to sound like Jimmy Thelin, that little bit of leadership there in that team, and that's something that he's been crying out for.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on there. Clarkson as a player is phenomenal. He's played at a great level. He's came in, you know, at the time is probably one of the highest earners, and on the back of a decent transfer fee as well. You don't just come through Liverpool's academy in a really stacked position of midfield
Mm-hmm.
and be terrible. You should be coming in a team, like Aberdeen, and really putting your stamp on it and showing your quality. And I do think, like say, he's got to do that more. He does have to take that little bit of leadership, albeit he's not the oldest player in the team, but in terms
Mm-hmm.
of levels he's played at, he should really be setting that example. Um, so yeah, a real positive there, and obviously all over the pitch in general from that game. I suppose the one slight blip, as you mentioned earlier, was the concession of a goal. Um, 4-1, Queen's Park then obviously looked like that bit between their teeth started pressing a little bit more, albeit it was maybe just on the high of the adrenaline of getting back into it. A slight sloppy goal to concede, perhaps.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I was blaming Palaversa at the time, but I don't know if it was him or not. Seemed to miscue the clearance. Either fresh air kicked it or it kind of went under the boot and then it hit whoever was behind them and kind of fell to Zach Rudden. Yeah, obviously it's not going to kind of haunt us at 4-0, but I'm sure for the defence and Mitov, frustrating not to get that clean sheet bonus out of the game, and just shows that, yeah, you have to stay concentrating at all times. But yeah, again, not going to dwell on it too much because it didn't cost us anything.
No, exactly. There's no point in dwelling on it. Like we've said before, when it comes to cup football, it was a professional performance. We're through to the semi-finals. Another trip to Hampden.
Yeah,
Obviously, as you've mentioned, at time of recording, draws not been made. Full-time result isn't full-time's not concluded in the St Johnston Livingston game. So as it
yeah.
stands, ourselves, Hearts, and Celtic
Mm-hmm.
are in the pot for the semis. Who would your preferred draw be?
Well, I think everyone would want the winners of tonight's game, as I said, as we're recording this on Monday night, and St Johnston have actually not long gone 1-0 up now. Although I was speaking to someone at Rory's Football tonight, and they said if we do get the winner of tonight's game, let's not play that game at Hampden, because move it to a Tynecastle or somewhere else, which is a bit more suited to the crowd you might get. I think, look, anybody but Celtic in that semi-final. That's really, I think everyone, probably all other three teams that make it to the semi-final will be thinking the same.
Yeah, I mean,
Although Hearts would be unbearable to lose against because their fans would not let it go for a long time.
oh, they never do. They never do. Long memories when it comes to beating us, short memories when it comes to the fact they've played championship football more times
Yeah,
than they've had hot dinners.
yeah,
But yeah, like you say, it's always a tough one. I think you've the likelihood is whoever beats Celtic wins the cup. Whether you're doing that in the semi-finals or a final, you're more than not going to have to play them at some point. So it's just sort of when you want to get that one out the way. Is it more of a gut punch to lose it in the semi and then
mm,
see Celtics potentially playing St Johnstone in a final, or
yeah.
is it more gut wrenching as we've seen before to lose in the 90th minute in the pissing rain to a Tom Rogic goal? Um,
You didn't
and
have to go any further than that. I think everyone
I
knew where you were going.
I had to
But,
suffer the BBC commentary about it, so everybody else does as
yeah,
well.
but again, we spoke about this at work today. Would you rather face Celtic at the end of, well, mid-April, which is the week after? Well, if we get Celtic in the draw, which feels like it's inevitable, so we'll talk about it like that. You'd be playing Rangers one weekend and then Celtic the next. But would you rather play them whilst they've still got something to play for within the season, or play them at obviously the showpiece event, last game of the season, when literally their last 5 games will be preseason friendlies and they can rest who they want ahead of the cup final, where we're in a position, obviously, speaking, if we get to a final, you're playing games to finish as high up that league and get that European place doesn't really suit the likes of ourselves, Hearts, or St Johnston if one of those three teams got to the final alongside Celtic.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you say, playing Celtic in any final, I don't think it's going to suit going to suit anyone's preference. But yeah, obviously the draw happened this evening, so it's all hypotheticals as to who we might get. And like you say, in action tonight, St Johnston, who we face on Saturday at McDermott Park. A potential tough one, do you think, Glenn, away from home against a St Johnston that's obviously, as it stands, could potentially be coming into this game on a win,
Mhm.
but also of fighting for their lives down towards the bottom of the league with a lot to play for coming into crunch time of the season.
Yeah, I would like to think, the fact that we've got the best part, well, actually, it is the best part of 48 hours in terms of rest time on St Johnston could play into our hands again. Speaking about taking those players off around the hour mark and protecting them for the weekend coming up. We are, by all accounts, had no injuries coming off the game against Queen's Park. So I'm assuming bar Christers Tobers, and obviously we don't know the situation around Nielsen. We should be going into this game as fit and healthy as possible and confident as well, based again on the performance that we saw um, on Saturday lunchtime. But we all know that McDermott Park is not the best place to go and play football. My concern around this weekend is the forecast for this week because I think back to St Johnston's last home game against Hearts and the absolute state of that pitch. It was awful. It was, well, quite frankly, a mud bath. I think we spoke before we started recording one of the episodes about how the goalkeepers needed to probably change their outfits before actually taking to the field. They were that clarted. So, it might not suit the style of play that we've liked to adapt under Jimmy Thelin. So I don't think it's going to be pretty on the eye for those in attendance. And as you say, St Johnston fighting for their lives always kind of changes the dynamic at this point of the season. But equally, we're sitting here fighting for third place. So who wants it more? And you'd like to think it's us.
Yeah, like you say, both teams a lot to play for. I don't think it will be pretty, like you say, if especially if the pitch is in the same sort of nick. Um, Obviously, as well, speaking about um, slight farces. It'll be interesting to see how much Don's fans end up being in attendance after the sort of the unknown nature
Yeah.
of ticket sales. Obviously, having to be made through St Johnston's ticketing portal, to
Mhm.
give it a fancy name, because by all means the organisation wasn't. Um, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see how many make it to Perth.
Mhm.
Speaking of making it to Perth, do you think that same team that started against Queens Park also make it to Perth as the starting 11 come what, quarter to two?
Yeah. I guess the only position I see potentially changing is Leighton Clarkson's position, if Nielsen's fully fit. Um, but if you said to me the team that started against Queen's Park are going to start this Saturday, would you be happy? I would say yeah, because I don't think any of them did anything wrong to merit being dropped. I thought Graham Shinney showed that he does have the legs. Again, I think it also helps when you're 4-0 up. You don't have to exert yourself as much. Um, yeah, I've got no issues if Jimmy Thelin names an unchanged 11, but I will be disappointed if Jeppe Ockels comes back into the team at the expense of Shaden Morris, just based on like I was when we saw Shaden Morris and Duke dropped after the Elgin game, because I personally, for me, I think you've got to reward the players that are, in possession of the shirt. Um, so yeah, I would be frustrated to see certainly that front four, if there's any changes there.
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement with you there. Like you say, I think on recent form and recent performances, I think Shady should definitely retain his place. I think it'll be an interesting one around that midfield because again, albeit against lower league opposition, I felt like we did look quite balanced in there with Clarkson and Palaversa. I think Shinnie at left back also helps. I've said before, it almost feels like you're playing with with an extra body in midfield at times,
Mhm.
with the sort of amount of running that he does.
And
Um,
I think as well, like going back to my point about the pitch, yes, if the pitch isn't great, it might not be conducive for passing football, but we've also seen how Leighton Clarkson and Ante Palaversa can ping a pass from one side of the pitch to the other. So I'm not saying that the game's going to be hoofball, but it might be a bit of quality hoofball if it resorts to that, and Leighton and Ante are launching balls in diagonal directions across the McDermott Park pitch.
Yeah, yeah, like I say, it might be the best option to forego the mud as well. Obviously, I don't think anything's really came out about the extent of Tobers potentially being out.
Mm-mm.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens at centre half there. Um, Obviously, like we said, Jimmy will have no doubt gone through all of this already, and will have some sort of idea in his head. Potentially, the Tombola makes another appearance. Um, who who knows at this point? But I think that pretty much, I think, wraps it up for this evening.
I think so.
And a bit different, not doing a live.
Yeah.
Um, but hopefully another victory alongside our trip to Hampden to celebrate on Saturday. Um, a bit of a change of me doing the questions this evening, Glenn. So thank you for joining me this evening.
And remember, if you've been watching on YouTube, to leave a comment down below with your thoughts on the weekend's victory and, of course, looking ahead to that St Johnston game. Like the video as well, subscribe if you're new, and follow us on your audio platform of choice as well. And yes, big thanks to Phil for stepping into the host seat, and also a big thanks to all of you for tuning in to another episode. Until next time.